listen to me carefully. There are no UFOs. Do you understand what I'm saying? Our technology base is about 30 years of where everyone thinks it is. When you look at the space shuttle and our technology base is 30 years ahead of that. If you had a chance to look at it, you would actually die of fright.
And once you said to me, John, don't go toward the light, it's a trick. Go toward the darkness.
Science doesn't know it yet, but gravity is instantaneous, and there's two forms of it, A and B. And basically, to travel hundreds of times faster than the speed of light, what you do is, it's not that they came here looking down and say, oh yeah, that's a neat place, let's go down and visit. I think they created the whole thing, and that's their interest. And he's screaming and he's saying, oh God, help me, God, please help me. And the little grays are looking down, and they very coolly they said, why do you call for your God? There's only us up here.
Today we're going to be doing something special. We're going to be looking into something that meant a lot to me when I was younger. A radio show called Coast to Coast AM, starring Art Bell. Now I believe it's by George Norrie as the radio host, but Art Bell back in the day was the man. Great radio host. He would have on interesting subjects and interesting people that would be knowledgeable in various fringe topics, I would say. Like, I remember hearing long conversations between Art Bell and somebody that maybe said that they were abducted by aliens, and the next night they'd talk about secret military bases on the moon with portals linking the two worlds. Interesting stuff, very interesting stuff. The show still is on the radio, but to me, it's mostly about selling books anymore. I don't really get a whole lot of the value or the entertainment from it that I used to. Someone had recommended this video, or rather this particular radio show, where John Lear, who was a very knowledgeable individual, came forward and unveiled a whole lot of stuff that is apparently being unveiled today. So this was, I want to say, 30 years ago, because I believe it was in 1994. So yeah, 30 years ago, this radio show was taking place, and apparently a lot of the government officials and the official accounts of UFOs and different things in society that are coming forward today were apparently all laid out 30 years ago. So what we'll do is we'll go through this and see what kind of things we can deduce from it, and maybe we can find out what's next. With that said, let's dive in.
Jet, including speed around the world, and holds the most FAA airman certificates issued to a single individual.
So before we dive into this, I just want to share how thrilled I am to hear this music and to be listening to this voice again. I don't know how many late nights I had listening to these radio shows, so I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. It's very, very special that we can enjoy this moment here together. So cheers, much love, and let's get back into it.
Include the airline transport rating, flight instructor, ground instructor, navigator, flight engineer, flight dispatcher, airframe and power plant mechanic, control tower operator, and parachute rigger. He has been a commercial pilot for 34 years, has been flying for 38 years. He holds the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Award for Outstanding Airmanship, presented in 1968. He has flown missions worldwide for various government agencies. He flew in Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos between 1967 and 73, and has flown extensively in Europe, the Middle East, Afghanistan, the Far East, and Africa. As a non-sked pilot, he has over 17,000 hours of flight time, of which over 13,000 hours are in jets. Lear's father was William P. Lear, Sr., who not only helped develop the first car radio, the 8-track stereo, and the automatic pilot for fighter aircraft, but who also developed, of course, the Lear jet, one of the first and most successful of all business jet aircraft. Lear studied industrial design at the Art Center College in Los Angeles and was a state senate candidate in Nevada in 1980. He has written extensively about airplanes and other subjects, was Middle East correspondent for Combat Illustrated between 1975 and 77 while stationed in Beirut. He is an amateur photographer and astronomer, has won several photography awards for pictures taken during his worldwide travels. In the early 70s, John Lear owned and skippered the 12-meter America's Cup boat Soliloquy out of Marina del Rey. His interest in UFOs began after reading Bud Hopkins' book, Missing Time. Then, a chance encounter with a U.S. Air Force pilot who was at a base in England where an extraterrestrial craft landed in December of 1980. In 1988, John met a government scientist who worked on a back engineering program of recovered extraterrestrial flying saucers for the Department of Naval Intelligence at a secret base within the Nevada test site known only as S4. This scientist not only explained how these craft traveled many times faster than the speed of light, but in March of 1989 took John to a remote desert location to watch the Navy test fly one of those extraterrestrial craft. John, who no longer gives lectures on the subject of UFOs, and has no plans, incidentally, to write a book, is currently a DC-8 captain with a major cargo carrier, has 4 daughters, and lives in Las Vegas with his wife, Mara Lee. So that's a pretty full plate for anybody's life, I would say, and a little fuller than mine has been, certainly, and I think most. In just one moment, we'll get to John Lear, and I think you'll find him more than just a little fascinating.
Oh, I'm so excited, guys. I'm so excited. I honestly haven't listened to Art Bell. I've listened to a little bit of George Norrie, but again, a lot of their new stuff, coast to coast, it really just seems like trying to get on guests to sell books. But on the rare interviews where it is somebody there with some weird out there ideas or some potential leaks, some esoteric knowledge, something tangible for us to latch on and think of. Oh yeah, I'm excited. Let's get it. Let's get it.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, here comes John Lear. John, well, wait a minute. Let me put you on hold there and bring you up here. John, it's been a long time since we've had you on the program. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it sure has been. It's been, what, over a year?
At least that long, John. And the network in that time has grown magnificently. I think we've gone from about 28 stations to about 120.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we've come a long way, baby. Well, anyway, John, you've done a lot in your life, haven't you?
Yeah, a little bit here and there.
It's been awfully busy. I mean, this is quite a resume you've got, and that's a lot to do in a life. And then all of a sudden, at some point, you decided to mix into all of this, which is enough for about 2 people normally, and you got involved in UFOs.
Yes, involuntarily, I might add.
Involuntarily. Well, look, we'll get to that. You've done something kind of interesting. You've given me this timeline, and I do appreciate it. I would like to go back over the history a little bit with you, John, and pick your brain about what you know about the incidents that you have listed for me. Did modern ufology really begin about 1947?
Yeah, it really did with the Ken Arnold sightings. But now there's been a lot that happened before that. There was a recovery, I think, in 1941. I think in Arizona, and there was a lot of activity during World War II. But really, modern ufology started in 1947 with the recovery. Well, first with Ken Arnold sighting up in Seattle, I think it was, and then the recovery of the craft in Roswell, New Mexico.
Well, I'm not familiar with the Arnold sighting.
Well, the Ken Arnold sightings was when he saw those 9 discs flying through the air. He was out on a search and rescue mission, And he saw these discs, and when he landed, the reporters wanted to know what he saw, and he said, well, they look kind of like saucers, and that was the first coining of the term flying saucers.
Ah.
And this happened like in late June of 1947, and coincidentally, just like a week later, was this recovery of the craft in Roswell.
Well, I say modern ufology. Really, there have been sightings, I suppose, for as long as man has been around to record them, haven't there?
Yeah, at least there's just hundreds of references in the Bible, and before that, Chinese and Indian records record saucers, up to 4,000 or 5,000 years ago.
Okay, now to Roswell very quickly. I interviewed the author of the book, The Truth About the UFO Crash at Roswell the other day, and he did a pretty good job of documenting what I guess is, would you say it is the best documentation of something that has happened?
Yeah, it probably is, other than, of course...
TaxAct doesn't expect you to have all the answers. That's why we've got experts on hand who do. Well, the answers to tax stuff, not like if alien...
Well, no, that's right, it is.
It is. And I know you've looked at Roswell. I guess it's probably one of the first things that you studied when you jumped into all this. What kind of conclusions did you draw about it, John?
Well, at that time, in 1985, when I first got in this, I think there was over 200 witnesses that were still alive that had either touched or loaded or seen the craft and the bodies. And a good portion of those people are still alive now, but there was just overwhelming evidence that this occurred.
What actually supposedly happened? Was what is the best guess? Was there a collision? Did it blow up? Does anybody speculate about what happened to this craft?
There's theories, and I don't think it's so much so important as what happened, the fact that it did happen. Now, some people say there was two craft, and one landed and one crashed on the Magdalena Flats about 100 miles east of Roswell, and then there was a craft or portions of a craft that landed on the Brazil Ranch there near Corona. But whatever did happen, they certainly collected a large amount of debris, and there was a lot of people involved in this effort. But what was so interesting is the preparedness of the military to deal with this. There was no confusion. They knew exactly what to do. They knew exactly what they had, and that it must be kept a secret. And they were very well prepared for this.
So that would indicate to you, I guess, that they had some knowledge of what was going on, or some interaction prior to that.
They certainly had advanced knowledge that there was a probability or possibility that this could happen, and they were very well prepared for it.
All right. Also in that same timeline, 1947, the establishment, the original establishment of MJ-12. And the MJ-12 documents, which I've seen, John, do you view those as legitimate?
The information is legitimate, not necessarily the documents. President Truman certainly formed MJ-12 on September 24th, 1947. There's enough evidence in government documents that he did have a meeting with certain people and did form this body, which, of course, has been in charge ever since.
What was the job of him?
Was Majestic 12 the first major misinformation campaign then?
MJ-12. Did it have? It had a charter, right? What was it supposed to do?
The charter of MJ-12 was basically to research the craft, determine what it was made of, whether there was a threat to this country, and to determine what should be done to tell, if at all, the public about what was going on.
Mm-hmm. So they kind of were the overseers of all this.
Yeah, they were, and they are the overseers. The original 12 that were appointed by Truman, the last one that died, I think it was 1983, and that was former Secretary of the Army, Gordon Gray. He was the last member. As to who is involved or a member of MJ-12 today, we can only speculate. I really don't know, but...
Well, since that time, there must have been many members. In other words, people die, people retire, people get sick, all kinds of things. So if it's... Are you saying it's still in place today?
Yes, MJ-12 certainly is in place, and they have, they would have had to replace the original 12. I don't think it would be more than 30 were probably ever involved.
People talk, John, about this current administration, the Clinton administration, and how open they've been with the nuclear, the tests that were done, the awful things that were done. And they have hopes that they will also be open about UFOs and maybe tell us what's going on. What do you think?
Never. When I first got into what they call ufology, and I think it's a dumb name, but when I first got interested in this and realized the overwhelming impact of what was going on and the cover-up that had been in place for so many years, I got up on my soapbox and did lectures and said, "Hey, you got to listen to me. There's something going on here that we should all be aware of." And then that was like 1985. And now in September of 1994, I believe that the government was correct to cover it up. And as short as 3 or 4 years ago, I still thought they were planning to gradually release the information so that the public would, not panic, but accept this. And now I don't think they ever had any intention of doing that, and I don't think they have today. And as odd as it may sound, I kind of go along with it. I believe that the public does not have a need to know.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, it absolutely makes sense. Not releasing the information, not giving a hard stance on yes, they do exist, because realistically, people don't need to know this information. If we're not even going to get into the concept that revealing this information to the general public would collapse a lot of systems and beliefs and ideologies, and it would just conflict with a lot of different ways that people live. So looking beyond that, there really just doesn't need to be a reason for us to know. It really just paints the picture that there is a reason to not divulge the connection that would potentially be there, or to reveal the knowledge of these extraterrestrial or interdimensional or whatever these beings are. But there doesn't seem to be a reason for them to acknowledge it fully. So it does make sense why they would never fully come forward with it, why they would never take a hard stance. Yes, they do exist. Although I believe the Vatican did come forward and say, I don't know whether they said that it was a confirmation or just that if there is, they would be part of humanity. I forget exactly what it said, but there have been really some very, very close lines that are being approached or crossed currently. Really, the big one is just the military videos coming forward, and we have the congressional meetings. We do have perhaps the biggest push for a disclosure, or we're just seeking some form of acknowledgement from our leaders, the politicians, the governments, that there is more. And they're just refusing to. And this was 30 years ago. They're not doing it now. It seems spot on the money. They have no reason to reveal to us.
Certainly don't have a right to know. There's so many aspects to this thing that would really disrupt public life as we know it, that I don't think they had any intention of doing it. The only reason that they would maybe be forced to do it is if there was a crash or a landing that absolutely could possibly not be denied. And they have facilities and teams in place to prevent things like that ever happening. There have been saucers that have crashed very, very near to cities, and it's been completely covered up. They have teams that go out, and it's their business to be sure that the public never finds out. And if this includes relocating personnel or even terminating personnel that have seen this unauthorized, either accidental or on purpose, they go to that extent.
Well, I do know this. There have been crashes here near us, John. I'm to the west of you, and you know what I'm near.
Yeah.
And there have been crashes out here, and it's true, the public would never know. They get these areas quickly cordoned off, and you don't get anywhere near it. And, you know, it's wreckage, and it could be anything. And so who knows? If a saucer did come down, they could get control of it very quickly, just like that, couldn't they?
Exactly. I heard one that landed, didn't crash, but landed just maybe a few miles outside of downtown Albuquerque. And these teams are located all over the United States. They're in underground facilities. They have helicopters. They have people who are technicians and heavy equipment operators who have passes and authority to go to any civilian or military base and drive right off with this heavy equipment. And their job is to go and keep this from being seen. And one of the first things they do is they have these portable walls that are put in place. And then they secure the area. If it's like near a freeway, what they can do is have a heavy truck purposely have a wreck right there to block the freeway several miles from the crash.
Wow.
Or the landing. They can also start fires. They do really interesting things to keep the people from seeing them. Anyway, they erected these portable walls around this thing, and everybody stood around trying to figure out what to do. I think it was there for about 5 hours, and then all of a sudden it just left.
Huh.
I've seen several videos with interviews with John Lear, and he's always impressed me, but continuously, every time I hear him, now on the radio in this instance, he seems like a very genuine guy. He doesn't seem like he's trying to exaggerate or trying to please you with what he's trying to say. It does seem like he's just being forthright with his opinions and his knowledge.
And nobody got out. There was no communication, and it just left.
All right. You know, we're very efficient in this country at doing this kind of thing, and I don't doubt that for a second. I've seen it myself. But, John, they come down all over the world. Or at least you would think they come down all over the world. So what about other countries less prepared to make it all a big secret?
We go in and with money, we say, you know, we need to have this craft, and here's so many millions of dollars. Be sure that nobody ever finds out about it. We had a recovery in Bolivia, one in Argentina, one in South Africa, just a very few years ago. All over the world, except for Russia. We didn't have any control over those, and I don't know how that happened. I mean, I don't know what happened in Russia, if there was any crashes there, or if there was any recoveries there. So,
what in 1948, the Aztec recovery, possible EBE-1. What does all that mean? The Mantell incident.
Aztec recovery was a saucer crash in Aztec, New Mexico. And they recovered a few bodies from that one. It's not sure where they got their first live alien, but they were named EBEs, extraterrestrial biological entities, by Dr. Detlef Bronk, who was one of the first members of MJ-12. At some point in that 47, 48, 49, they recovered their first live alien. The Mantell incident is separate from that. That was the P-51 crash piloted by Thomas Mantell over, I'm trying to think, it was in Kentucky. And he got up to about 30,000 feet. He was on clear communication, and he said, I have it in sight. It's enormous, a thing of tremendous size. And then the next thing they knew, this P-51 crashed in the field. It was completely disintegrated. There are stories that Mantell's body was not in the crash, but I don't know for sure. But that was the Mantell incident, and that occurred in the same year as the Aztec recovery.
How many bodies totally do you think they've recovered?
From between 50 to 100, representing at least 5 different civilizations.
50 to 100 different alien bodies, 5 to 10 different civilizations?
To 100, representing at least 5 different civilizations.
At least 5 different civilizations. What So this is 30 years ago. He's claiming that, wow. I wonder what, presumably one of those would be the Greys. So one can imagine, unless there are more than 5, there's got to be more than 5 different civilizations. And he didn't say races, he said civilizations, really. So that doesn't necessarily mean that there are more than one race. It could just be multiple civilizations. That's interesting that he chose that word instead of alien races or species, whatever they may be.
They're all on in cryogenic storage. One of the interesting things here is in 1972, the only civilian that I know that ever got to see the bodies was Jackie Gleason, and he was a very big supporter of Nixon's, and they were out playing golf down there in Miami in 1972, and Jackie Gleason, as not many people know, was one of the, he had a tremendous interest in flying saucers, and he had one of the biggest civilian collections of books and memorabilia and pictures and stuff like that.
No, I didn't know that.
In upstate New York, his house was built in the shape of a saucer, and he called it the mothership.
Oh.
Anyway, in a conversation with Nixon, he said, was any chance of getting to see the bodies? And Nixon said, yeah, sure. They finished their golf game. They went over and got in the presidential helicopter, and they went to Homestead Air Force Base, which was right near the where they were playing, and golf, and he was shown the bodies.
Incredible.
The reason we know this story is
all right, John, hold it right there. We're at the bottom of the hour, and we'll be right back.
Just casually, hey, want to go see some alien bodies? Sure. Hop on my presidential plane? Wow, that's unreal.
Once again, my guest, John Lear, who has flown in jet aircraft for many, many thousands of hours, and pressed a little bit, now recalls one incident where he saw something or another. Anyway, John, when was it? What did you see?
Well, it was like 1966 or so, and I was descending in a Lear jet I was on a flight from Wichita to Los Angeles, and descending through like 30,000 feet, and I was headed westbound, and from my left to my right, I saw what I thought at the time was a NASA lifting body, that X-24 or one of those type things. Remember the one that the $6 million man crashed in?
I do, yes.
And that's what it looked like. And it went by, and I mentioned it to the co-pilot. When I landed, I distinctly remember calling Hank Beard, who was chief test pilot at Learjet, and I said, man, you'll never guess what I saw today. And he said, what? And I said, a lifting body passed me. And only after, 25 or 30 years do I look back and say how ridiculous that was, because under no stretch of the imagination would a lifting body be in the main approach corridor for the Los Angeles International Airport.
Heavens no.
So I don't know what I saw, but, in all my thousands of hours, I guess that's the only strange thing I ever saw.
That's it, huh? All right.
I find that interesting that this man comes forward with all this knowledge, but he doesn't feel a need to embellish a story. He doesn't feel a need to exaggerate his story, to make any overly exaggerated claims that would not be believable. That seems very plausible. I personally have had more unrealistic UFO sightings than that. So I definitely find that interesting. And again, it just kind of leans a bit more into his credibility that he is a genuine guy.
There's so much history to go through here, John. I guess let's jump up to a violent encounter, supposedly, between UFO humanoids and the U.S. military at Lumberton, Ohio.
Yeah, there was two. There was one that happened in Cambodia and one that happened in Xenia, Ohio. The one at Xenia, Ohio was an encounter between the occupants of an alien craft and a U.S. military detachment, and there was 11 American casualties and an unknown number of aliens, and one of the researchers met a guy who worked at the off-limits area at Wright Pat who claims to have seen bodies on litters arriving at the base during that time frame.
Wow. As I go through the history, it is interesting in one respect. all of these occurrences, all of these witnesses, all of these bodies, how can it, well, of course it isn't really kept secret, because here we are talking about it, but still the official cloak of secrecy remains. How can that be?
It's great. They can keep a secret if they want to.
Well, you know, that's really true, and if anything, the revelations about the nuclear testing, I think, prove that. You know, how I can't imagine how our government could have kept secret the fact that they were feeding radiation to children, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they did. All right. You mentioned Cambodia, a firefight between U.S. military and small gray humanoids?
Yeah, that was in April of 1972, and what happened is members of the U.S. Army Special Operations Group were involved in a firefight with the occupants of an identified alien craft. There were several alien casualties and a single human death, though several were burned by an unknown weapon. And what happened was this platoon happened on a group of aliens who were sorting human body parts into large bins and sealing them. A firefight ensued, and several of the aliens were killed and through headshots because the suits that they were wearing were essentially bulletproof. And as the soldiers pulled back, several of the aliens quickly packed as much as they could, got in this craft, and it took off. The unit was interrogated originally by military personnel and then by civilians who were identified as representatives of magic. And they are part of the Majestic group that go out and help cover these things up.
All right, looks like we're going to jump into the tough stuff early. Why, John, would they be packing up body parts?
Well, you got me. You know, for every answer I've ever gotten in all this research, I get 10 more questions posed. So if you're looking for answers...
Well, I think this, though, goes to a pretty awful...
Again, the fact that he doesn't feel a need to push what may be false ideas, like he doesn't say, my opinion, though, it could be so-and-so, which, you know, could be completely bogus. Instead, he keeps his opinion to himself and gives forth the information that he is more sure of. I really respect that. This guy seems pretty legit.
Area. I mean, you have not ruled out the possibility, have you, that we are, for them, food?
No, but it's kind of far out. I did make that statement once in an interview, and I've regretted it ever since because it sounds so outrageous. I'm not sure that
listen, let me stop you, John. It really did sound outrageous then, but you know something? I've been interviewing a lot of ufologists, scientists, scholars, people who have said things that when they say them, John, they suddenly hearken back to some of the early interviews that I did with you, and I'll say to myself, sometimes out loud, I'll be damned. You know, I remember John said that, and a lot of people guffawed, and here we are. I mean, a lot of that stuff that you told me, John, has been coming back recently.
Yeah.
And a lot of investigators...
So, stuff that he said long before this was coming to fruition 30 years ago. And supposedly now we're seeing more of his predictions coming true. The concept of human beings being a source of food for aliens, that's absolutely horrifying. But is it true? You tell me, is it true? I've heard plenty of the theories that they feed off of our emotions, whether it's positive or negative. I mean, I think I've heard more that negative energy. Oh, this is kind of the Monsters, Inc. theory to a certain degree, that a certain other being feeds off of our, whether it's turmoil or stress or negativity. That concept, if you look at the news, the way they're legit trying to stir up fear. I mean, fear mongering has become a huge term because it's such an active tactic that we come across every day in our lives. people trying to poke and prod emotion from us. And it does seem to be exaggerated by the tribalism that we have, where you're part of X or Y groupthink.
John, are beginning to go down some of the same roads you did. Back then, you were one of the only ones saying, look, these guys are not necessarily warm, fuzzy, nice people who wish us well.
Right.
And you were almost alone then. But now, let me tell you, John, more people than not are beginning to join you in that in that view.
Yeah.
At any rate, the Dulce incident.
Okay, now the Dulce incident I first heard about in 1986 or 1987 when I was invited to be part of a group of researchers who met at Crestone, Colorado, and we just traded information. And I was handed a letter by one of the guys who who had gotten this letter from a person who lived in Las Vegas, and said, why don't you research this? And it talked about this underground base, and it was sounded so far out. But I met with this person, and she had known one of the officers who had worked inside this base, and originally told about the massacre at Dulce. I further heard a story by a guy named Paul Benowitz, who lived in Albuquerque, who was involved in this, and he told me about it also. And the story went that in 1979 we had 44 scientists who were being instructed by the aliens in some subject. I don't know what it was, but they were being instructed at Dulce, and for some reason it was agreed that our security force, our Delta Force, would not carry conventional weapons at any time in this classroom or around this area. And for some reason, one of the officers walked in with a conventional sidearm, and the alien killed him outright. Now, how that was done, I don't know. But on the video, on the monitor, his compatriots, or the Delta Force, saw that he was killed, and they went down en masse to exact revenge, and it ended up that all 44 scientists and about 66 of the Delta Force were killed. It was just a complete massacre. So I just put this in the file. It was an interesting story, and it didn't come up again until Bob Lazar, who worked at S4, and we'll get into that later, read a report that documented this massacre. Now, the only thing different about the report that he read was that in the report he read, the massacre occurred somewhere around Area 51 or Groom Lake.
Is there any indication of how they were killed, John?
No, just head wounds. In the report it was said that they died of head wounds.
Head wounds. Whew. Again, that's a lot of relatives who are going to be requiring explanations and that sort of thing. How was it all explained? Well,
now remember, this is just speculation of how they handled it. We've realized now that most of the people that get in this program do not have relatives for one reason or another. Either they're orphans or their family is passed away or whatever. And it's essential that this kind of thing happen or kind of go this way, because they don't want to have to take the time to explain away the death of a relative.
So the people who do these things are screened specially for this kind of work, which includes
very specially. Yeah. But they also have other methods. They can go to the family and say, "Look, we're going to give you a annual or monthly stipend, but this is national security, and it's for God and country."
And so here,
mention this again.
Yeah. So sign this, and it'll be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Then I think it was an incident that had a lot of influence on you, didn't it? Bentwaters in 1980.
Yeah, Bentwaters occurred during 3 days in the end of December. We have a United States Air Force base about 70 miles northeast of London called Bentwaters. At that time, it was I think it still is an A-10 base, the Warthog tank killer. And very strange things happened during those 3 days, culminating with it wasn't a landing, it was an appearance of a very weird aircraft witnessed by General Gordon Williams, who was the base commander, Major Ted Conrad, Colonel Chuck Halt, Mary Warren, and a few others. But at any rate, the incident did occur, but it was just a story as far as I was concerned. Many pilots had heard it. And in 1985, I ran into a friend here in Las Vegas, an Air Force friend that I knew in Laos. And he was transferring from the regular Air Force to the Guard, and he came over to the house, and we started talking about stuff, and I mentioned, I asked where he'd been based. He mentioned Bentwaters, and I said, oh, that's supposedly where that saucer landed in 1980. He said, no, John, not supposedly. It did. He said, I didn't see it because I was confined to quarters, but I know the guys who did. And he said, I'll give you their names. And I said, wait a minute. You're telling me this stuff is real, that there are flying saucers? Because at this time, I had no real interest in this stuff. My interest was in spy planes, SR-71s, U-2s.
I understand. What about your dad, John? I know your dad had great abiding interest in all of this, didn't it?
I almost wish he would have kept going there.
Any of that rub off on you, or was it self-ignited?
No, because there was no proof. He was certain that they existed, and now that I look back, it's because of who his friends were. He was friends with General Vandenberg, who was first head of the CIA and original member of MJ-12. He was very, very close friends with Jimmy Doolittle, who was up to his eyeballs in this alien stuff. But he never let on to me, and it was just not a part of my interest. Sure, everybody's interested in flying saucers, but unless you see one or have hard evidence, it's just not a part of your life.
True.
But in 1985, it became a part when Greg said, yeah, it's true, it's going on. And that's what involuntarily, I might add, launched me into this research.
Okay, so that was then really the beginning of your...
That's super cool, honestly. I really, really wish my father would have had an interest in UFOs, or I wish I shared an interest in general with him.
Interest?
Right.
All right. In 1983, you have written Second Attempt at Public Disclosure, Linda Howe, MJ-12, and something about HBO. What does all that mean?
This was when Linda Howe was contacted by MJ-12 in order to do a documentary, and they said that they would make available to her many, many thousands of feet of saucers and whatnot, and they wanted her to write a documentary that would be presented on HBO. And she contacted HBO, and HBO said, we'll do it, but before we air it, we want filmed interview with the president, his chief of staff, and his National Security Council saying that this is true. And MJ-12 essentially led her on a round robin, so to speak, of different bases and different facilities and all kinds of things for about 8 months. At the end of which it was just terminated. She never heard anything more.
Well, that must have been very frustrating. I'm going to have to ask her about that.
There was no more contact, and only a few years later did she run into somebody who was involved in that, and they said, I'm sorry it turned out the way it did, Linda, but we had no option. There was no further explanation.
Wow, strange.
But the stories she told me of where they took her and the things she saw, just absolutely fascinating. And of course, Linda Howe is very articulate, very knowledgeable, and keeps voluminous notes. So, it wasn't just some story she was telling.
By the way, John,
I've seen her name mentioned countless times throughout different sources and different people, and seeing how much work that Linda Moulton Howe has put into the field, she really honestly can't get enough credit for how much she has put into this entire... She always does tremendous work, and she's done so much, so she doesn't get enough credit.
Again, on the subject of Linda Howe, I talked to her earlier today, and she said she's going to be on the way to New Mexico. She's had enough. There's too much going on down there, so she's going to be on her way to New Mexico, and will be reporting to us from New Mexico.
Well, she was the leading authority on mutilation. She did that documentary for the ABC affiliate in Denver in 1980.
Right, I believe so.
And then her and I, after the Crestone meeting, drove down to Roswell. And oddly enough, here we are driving out in the middle of the desert, just about 15 miles north of where the first UFO crashed. and we're on this little teeny road. It's a dirt road about 1,000,000 miles from nowhere, and I'm driving along in this truck, and we saw a dead cow, and I thought, well, here I am with the world's leading authority on cattle mutilations, and we see a dead cow. So we get out there, and there was none of the classic cookie cutter incisions, but we started looking around, and we saw 3 others. And then we saw 2 others, and then I stood up on the bed of the truck, and I think we counted 34 cows.
Wow.
And so we went to, we found the nearest ranch, and asked the guy if he knew about the cows, and he said, yeah, he said they died of some disease. Well, Linda Howe checked in with a veterinarian on this, whatever the disease was, and I don't remember what it is now, but the veterinarian said, no way. He said if that had been that disease, that place would have been cordoned off within 100 miles.
Uh-huh.
Just a very odd, one of those unexplained...
It is, and I've heard Linda Howe tell exactly the same story, John. So I guess that's the way it happened.
That was her.
That's weird.
And that was like in 1986.
All right. She's still trying to get it out to the public today, and that's, well over a decade now.
Yeah.
Then the Eisenhower breed, 84, leaked to Hollywood producer and friend of Bill Moore.
Yeah, that was Jamie Chandra, and one day he received in the mail this film, which was undeveloped, which he had developed, and it was the Eisenhower briefing as we've come to know it, and it was supposedly the briefing that Eisenhower got when he became president on the alien situation. It told the members told about the Roswell crash. It told it told the original members of MJ-12 and what they planned to do with it. It's a very interesting document. Now, people say, and I say the information was definitely true, not necessarily that the document itself was a legitimate document.
All right. Then you say 1985, my interest begins. Actually, it began a little earlier than that. What made you write that, John? Why 1985?
That's when Greg Wilson came through Las Vegas
and told you the story about
Bentwaters story.
Yeah, okay, I see. Then 1986, and I remember this one very well. JAL 747 Captain is followed by UFO 3 times as big as an aircraft carrier, and I remember that.
It was an enormous craft, and it followed him for an hour. He was on his way from Keflavik, Iceland to Anchorage, fuel stop in Anchorage, and then on to Japan. And about an hour out of Anchorage, at 33,000 feet this night, this thing appears in front of the aircraft, and it was not a passenger flight, it was cargo, and so there's only 3 guys in the cockpit, but they all saw it. Radar had it. Returned to be sure it wasn't some gigantic reflection of some sort. They went down to 29,000 feet to see if it would follow them, and it did. And then after about an hour, it just left, and they landed, gave their FAA report, and other than a few comical news stories ignored by the press, specifically by Aviation Week and Space Technology, who is our premier aviation magazine, didn't give it one word, not even a sentence.
Well, for all your flying, John, and the one incident you have had that may have been something like that, you must talk to all kinds of other captains, lots of friends in the industry. Do they talk about this, John?
Not unless policy, cockpit etiquette bring this up, unless I've been with the crew for a long time and unless it seems appropriate. But you find out that maybe a third of the pilots have seen something.
While on the subject, I just want to share how fortunate I feel to be able to share this interest with you, because countless times throughout my life, I've tried to share these things that seem important to me, but when I attempt to share with others, they seem to have little to no interest whatsoever. Maybe it's just me they have little interest in, but either way, I've struggled to find like minds that are interested in this kind of thing. So I feel very fortunate to have the internet to be able to sync us all together into this interesting little experience that we have, as well as to just be able to connect with you in general, and just wanted to express some gratitude there.
We're getting up toward the modern day here, but first let us look at 1987, and particularly the Gulf Breeze sightings, because that's still going on, John. It's still going on. We're getting photographs. There have been recent photographs. One, which is a very interesting picture. A lot of people are following up on that right now. And the same gentleman at Gulf Breeze continually seeing these craft. What is your assessment of what happened at Gulf Breeze?
Well, I first heard about it in 1987 when the Channel 4, I believe it was down there, put out the documentary, and it had Ed Walters' film that he took out the back door of this craft hovering behind the tree line there, just over the tree line. And it was tremendously interesting. There was no doubt in my mind that from the videotape that this thing occurred, but there was so many people jumped on it as a hoax, and they just did backflips to try and prove it was a hoax. But
that's right.
In my opinion, it was not. It was the true thing. And Ed Walters just took a tremendous amount of flack over the years for showing this film and for saying the things he did. But I believe him 100%.
He's not easy to get as an interviewee. I've tried to get Ed Walters a few times, and he's somewhat cantankerous and not very interested. So I suggest you stay planted. We're about to open the telephone lines. In fact, we are going to do that coming up now in just a moment.
I don't know what I would ask if I was given the opportunity to ask John Lear a question that would be a bit overwhelming. I guess maybe what are his beliefs? Because he is not sharing his beliefs, really, from what it seems like. It seems like a lot of what he's sharing are just things that he's experienced or he's heard from others. So it's not even necessarily his own beliefs. So I guess I would just be inquiring a little bit more about what he personally believes is going on behind the scenes.
The son of Bill Lear, who invented the 8-track. John's father had an abiding interest in UFOs. John got one himself, but not because of his father's, interestingly. He did it on his own because of events that we've just documented over the last couple of hours. Now, back to John Lear. John?
Yes, sir.
All right. Neil Armstrong, on the occasion of the anniversary of the Apollo mission to the moon, was at the White House about 3 weeks ago now, I guess, 4 weeks ago, something like that. Anyway, Neil Armstrong rarely does public appearances, rarely has anything to say, but when he does, wow. What he said, and I took this quote directly from the NBC Evening News, was as follows, quote, and he said this at the White House, quote, "There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers. There are places to go beyond belief," end quote. Neil Armstrong. What do you think he meant, John?
Well, it sounds like a pretty powerful statement. Both Neil and Buzz Aldrin and most of the astronauts, all of them have seen something, and they've all seen incredible things. And they've been silenced by NASA, and over the years, it kind of wears at them. They'd like to get it out, but they can't be as blatant as say, yes, I saw this, and yes, I saw that. So I think that's basically what he's saying. I've heard some of the astronauts come out very vociferously and say, listen to me carefully. There are no UFOs. Do you understand what I'm saying? No UFOs. And what they're saying is, no, there's no unidentified flying objects. They're all identified.
The astronauts, particularly the ones that went to the moon, the early astronauts, have all had big trouble, John. Psychological troubles, a lot of divorces, a lot of drinking, a lot of trouble, period. And one source of that trouble, one might speculate, is that they have knowledge that they can't talk about that's eating away at them. Could that be so? Definitely.
And that's one of the ways in which they keep this secret is through it's called pain drugs hypnosis, where when they tell you this stuff, they give you a briefing, and it involves pain, it involves drugs, it involves hypnosis, so that it doesn't doesn't bother you that much, but it doesn't always work on everybody. And they know they have this knowledge, and it's hard to know something with this, with the ramifications of this kind of thing,
and not be able to
tell somebody.
Yeah, it would eat you alive, I suppose. John, just before we go to the phones, you have said, and this really is very different than a lot of ufologists today, that you've come to the conclusion that while you were digging in earlier years so that the world might know, you now don't think we ought to know, or that we have a right to know, or that it would be good for us to know, or how do you explain that, and why?
Well, it has to do with religion, and no, people should not know this. This is something that, as irritating as it might be, it's none of their business. There's nothing they can do to influence or modify it in any way. It's best they just go on with their lives and pay their taxes, find something they enjoy, boating, sailing, growing lawn or something like that, and get on with their life, because there's no reason to know this. And if they knew the true ramifications of this, it would bother them. It would eventually result in the breakdown of society. So
the breakdown of society. How much do you know, John, without...
It really makes me think that, Cypher was right. In the Matrix, ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss.
It really is. Because the more you know, the more you want to know. And the further away you drift from simple bliss. The careless not knowing and the magic of just experiencing, letting life happen instead of burdening all of the knowledge, all of the weight of accountability, whether that's life's, lifing, or the knowledge of how grim things can be from certain perspectives. And when you see how, especially what he's alluding to here, what is potentially an awful scenario that, when looked at humanity objectively, were nothing but, say a prison or a food source or whatever is reality for, this world we live in.
Not telling me what you know, how much do you still know that you haven't told?
Not very much. I've told you much of this stuff. The stuff I'm not talking about is religious stuff, and if you think a while, you can figure out what it's all about. I've told you most of the stuff.
But maybe not all.
No, not all, because there's a lot of sensitive, very sensitive stuff regarding religion.
All right. Let us take some calls, John.
A lot of sensitive stuff regarding religion. Now, I wonder if he's really just sugarcoating it to prevent it clashing with ideologies, because obviously that is a big part of this. If life originates contradictory to what certain beliefs spout, then it verifies, it invalidates so many beliefs, whatever it may be. So maybe he's just genuinely trying to avoid that to prevent people from breaking down. Maybe he's just genuinely looking out for people's well-being.
First-time caller line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning.
Hello, John. This is Kogo, San Diego.
San Diego, yes, sir.
Art, great show. Question, sounds like if the U.S. has some of this technology, that it really wouldn't be too big of a problem being confronted with other nations like Russia with their type of military. Do you think this type of technology can be implemented in such cases like war or anything like that?
All right. What about it, John?
Well, it certainly can, and this may be the result of the breakdown of the Soviet Union. Maybe we told them what we got and which direction we want them to go in. I don't know that for a fact, but it's possible that happened. Our technology base is about 30 years of where everyone thinks it is. When you look at the space shuttle and all the satellites and the neat stuff we got going, our technology base is 30 years ahead of that.
30 years ahead of that.
Just to give you an example of what I'm talking about 25 years ago, you read in the paper about talking rock technology.
Yes.
And what that was they put a rock in an anechoic chamber and gave it a pulse, like hello. And the rock absorbed the vibrations, and by measuring the vibrations, about a half a second later, measuring the vibrations, they could pull out the word hello. Well, in 25 or 30 years later, what they have now is a means to beam into a room and pulling off, measuring the vibrations that have been given, any of the crystal structure like glass or windows or anything like that,
right,
and pull out a conversation that was held 7 days ago.
Wow. Wow. That's some technology. On our East of the Rockies line, you're on the air with John Lear.
So hold on, let's dissect that for a second. He said in 94, they were 30 years ahead in 94. So realistically, they had our technology today back then. I wonder if we've kept that pace where they're still 30 years ahead of us, or if perhaps the gap has widened. I mean, realistically, I want to say, theoretically, if that's the case, then presumably they got that technology from crashed and retrieved UFOs. So they back engineered that, and they were 30 years ahead at that point. You look at the principle that shows what's the Moore's Law. Moore's Law showing, the exponential growth. I wonder if that was perhaps derived from the crashed wreckage and we, the reverse engineered technology. Wow, the concept is so crazy to think. 30 years ahead in technology. And how are they going to drip feed that out over the years? Huh. Wow. Interesting concepts here.
Hello?
You're on the air. Go ahead.
I was wanting to talk about Project Blue Book.
All right.
I was wanting to find out whether it's still being researched or if you've even heard of it.
Well, of course, we've heard of it. John, any comments on Blue Book? It is no more, or is it now going on below the surface?
It was established in 1948 or 49, and it was brought to a halt in 1969 by the Condon Committee. And what they said is, based on all their research, flying saucers did not represent a threat to national security. Now, they didn't go as far to say as they didn't exist. What they said was,
they're not a threat.
They're not a threat. But project actually, the actual project was called Grudge. The research of different sightings, and yes, that still goes on. Project Grudge is an active project.
That's an interesting conclusion, to not rule out their existence, but state they have no, they are not a threat to national security. Doesn't make sense to me. If they exist, they certainly would be a potential threat.
Yeah. Well, they got away with it.
Yeah. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning. Where are you calling from, please?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Kansas City, Missouri. All right.
Okay, what I'm going to say here has to do with the religion aspect, if that's okay with Mr. Lear.
Sure.
Okay, here's my opinion. This is just my opinion now, so this might not mean anything to you at all. But I am a Christian, and what I have gained from this is that this is just my opinion, but that UFOs have actually been built under the watchful eye of the Illuminati. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes, I've heard that before.
What do you think about that?
Choose your words carefully.
Huh?
It's possible.
For the reason to explain, do you believe in the rapture at all? I don't mean to make this into a religious show.
Yeah, please don't.
Okay.
Please don't. In other words, John believes there is a connection between religion and UFOs.
Can he please expound on that?
That you would not find agreeable, and which he would rather not expound on, I think. John?
No, if it's all the same to you, I do not want to expound on my religious views.
All right. It's kind of like when you say this. I guess we had to cover it, John. But when you say this, it's like putting a box on the table that says, "Do not open this box," and then just leaving it there, and everybody who comes past will inevitably open the box. And so they want to open the box. I understand that, but perhaps some boxes are best left unopened. On the wild card line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning.
Hi, I'm calling from the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And
Yes, sir.
I can prove right now that what Mr. Lear is saying is the opposite of the truth, because the U.S. government is not covering up information about the existence of extraterrestrial life. Government intelligence agencies have been spreading the rumor that aliens are among us to UFO researchers, and this has been documented by Jacques Vallée in his book Revelations. For example, in 1983, the proven disinformation agent Richard Doty at Kirtland Air Force Base invited Linda Howe to that Air Force Base and showed her these alleged secret documents claiming aliens among us. Then in 1985, Jacques Vallée and J. Allen Hynek were invited to Norton Air Force Base by some generals there and told that aliens are among us. And I think it's all a lie, and I have a reason for it.
Well, all right. Give that to us. You said you had proof, sir, so go ahead and lay it out.
The proof is what I just told you, and if you just get Jacques Vallée's book Revelations, that proves that the government isn't hiding it. It's pushing it on UFO researchers, and the reason for this reverse psychology disinformation campaign was stated by Stanton Friedman when he said that a belief in alien life would cause people to lose their faith in the value of nation states and lead to the acceptance of world government, which is exactly what the power elite who control the government wants, since their multinational corporations have most to gain from globalism.
All right. So there it is, John.
I mean, that honestly kind of makes sense, realistically, because even I believe it was Nixon said in that hearing, what would be more unifying than an extraterrestrial force that we're invading?
We often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
It does kind of make sense. Absolutely. That's a good call in.
Lays it out. It is something he's charging to lead us toward the one world government, that sort of thing.
Well, I certainly respect his opinion, and since I don't have any hardware, I'm certainly not going to be able to prove, what I say.
John, at one time, can you tell the story about element 115?
Yeah, element 115 is the power source for these extraterrestrial craft. We've been able to synthesize up to like 106. But there is an element on up the line that is 115. And by pumping protons into 115, it becomes...
So they did just move on right there. And I respect his right to just refuse to rebut. Again, that just kind of goes to show he understands that it requires extraordinary proof to make an extraordinary claim, and he can't, like he said, he doesn't have the hardware to provide that, to give the tangible proof. So, but it really does just go back to, at the end of the day, I don't necessarily believe, and I want to. Damn it. I really do want to believe that there is more life out there, but at the end of the day, this really is just, it's entertaining story. And until that proof is right in front of us and able to be touched and accepted, and it is a reality, it's just fantasy. It's fun. That's really all this is. Unfortunately, I want it to be real. I want it to be real so bad, but we can enjoy it for what it is for now.
116, which immediately decays, and what the result of the decay is antimatter. And when antimatter is mixed with matter, it's 100% conversion of matter to energy, which is a very, very large explosion. And what they do is they control this explosion to create heat, and also out of this reaction, they pull off the gravity A wave without going into details they use to propel themselves across the universe at speeds hundreds of times faster than the speed of light.
At one time, and you tell as much of the story as you can, or tell me to go fly a kite, but you had your hands on some 115, didn't you?
Yes, Bob Lazar had his hands on some 115. We did some experiments which proved it was exactly what he said it was. And I believe it was the evening of the George Knapp UFO's the Best Evidence. We kept very close watch on this stuff, but since we had it 4 or 5 months, we became a little careless and it was left out. And that night they broke into Bob's house and took it.
So you no longer have it, but that's about as close as you've come to hardware.
That's correct.
The first-time caller line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning.
Hi, Art. This is Randy from Leavenworth, Washington.
Hi, Randy.
I'm calling to ask Mr. Lear about the 3 different kinds of aliens. I subscribe to a newsletter, and it talks about all the government research, and the different type ships are different aliens from different sectors in the universe, and there's the reptilian form, the insectoid, and the human type.
Mm-hmm. Well, there may be a lot more than that. John, how many are there?
Well, in opinion, and this is only my opinion, there's about 70 types that are visiting Earth at one time or another with various agendas. Some of them don't have anything to do with what's going on here. They're just coming down to take a look. But they're all different types. And some of them, that if you had a chance to look at it, you would actually die of fright because they are so alien to what we are used to.
How's that, caller?
That sounds good.
All right, thanks. You would die of fright. Are they able to appear to us in a form different than that which would cause us to die of fright?
Apparently, some of them can do that, but according to some of the abduction stories, they hide themselves. You can't get a look. You can see their shape, but you can't see their face, and that's prevalent. If you've read John Mack's book, that's prevalent throughout all the abductions, is they cannot see the face.
Yeah, it's true. I had John Mack on the program about 3 weeks ago, John.
Very interesting guy, and I really enjoyed his book. It was more of the same, but it's interesting stuff.
It is. You know about the incident in which some young lady apparently set him up?
Yes, I thought that was really disgraceful, but it's just media tactics. I don't know what she gained by that. It just...
or what agenda, or whose agenda she was serving by doing that.
It was just an unfortunate incident.
Here we've got a Harvard professor, lots of credibility, and he gets set up. That's just almost too much for even me. John, hang tight. We're bottom of the hour. We'll be back to you.
I want to take a second while they're on commercial break to again thank you so much for tuning in. I don't really need to, but I'm going to go ahead and do the whole algorithm thing, like and subscribe. But at the end of the day, I just appreciate you tuning in and sharing this moment with me. So let's dive back in.
On the east of the Rockies line, top of the morning, you're on the air with John Lear. Where are you calling from?
Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth, Texas. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Lear, you say there are things you don't want to talk about for religious purposes, but I wanted to tell a story that I believe is true. All the cosmonauts reported seeing these huge angelic-like beings with their arms crossed and a smile on their face like they knew something was going to happen, and that was before Chernobyl blew up. And John Glenn reports seeing something on Freedom 7 flight.
Yeah, it really is true. With regard to the angelic beings, John, I also remember that report. Do you?
Yes. Now, when they had their arms crossed and they were smiling because Chernobyl was going to happen?
Could be. Now Russia wants Bibles.
What kind of an angel is that?
Russia now wants Bibles in their schools.
Yeah, all right, ma'am, thank you. That's no guardian.
Hold on, let's identify what stance he was taking there. He sounded skeptical of her questioning the validity of the angels. So that leads me to believe that he is actually religious and believes that angels to be good morally, or because he even questioned that's a belief, or that's an action of an angel. So that, I don't know if she's trying to bait out a little bit of his beliefs, goad out a little bit, but it does seem like that revealed a little bit of his hand there, because he did seem very skeptical of her question there.
An angel, is it, John?
I'd like to have.
I wonder how she could conclude that it was because of Chernobyl. That's really strange. On the other hand, I recall you saying one thing to me, John, that has haunted me for years and haunts me today.
Yeah.
We have had a number of guests on this radio program about life after death. Inevitably, in every warm and fuzzy life after death story, people rush toward the warm, inviting light. Down the tunnel, into the light. And once you said to me, John, don't go toward the light, it's a trick. Go toward the darkness.
Well, now remember, I qualified that by saying that's what Whitley Strieber told me.
Well, it still bugs me to this day, John, because what if I had to make that choice?
Well, right now I'm going towards the darkness.
You are, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, boy, that really drives me crazy. On our toll-free line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning. Where are you calling from, please?
I'm calling from Kodiak, Alaska.
Kodiak, Alaska. Yes, sir.
Yes, this is Dave. I've heard John talk about time travel, and I'm convinced that time travel is possible, and it's already happened. I opened those seals when I was 30 years old, and that, together with my birth date and the scriptures, unlocked the whole mystery.
All right, sir. Don, time travel. We've talked about it before. It's one of my favorite subjects. Do you believe time travel to be possible?
No question about it.
No, really?
Absolutely possible. You can go forward in time much easier than you can go back, but you can certainly go back in time.
I once wondered...
Oh, that's an interesting response there. It's easier to go forward in time than it is to go backward in time. I guess that makes sense, however, because technically astronauts, when they go into space and back, they actually time travel and they experience time a little bit faster than we do. So I guess looking at it from that standpoint, it does make sense. Obviously, all of this is like, it's so theoretical that it almost hurts your mind just to think about, but let's see where he goes with this.
And as have many people, and I'm going to make you tell me it's not true again. Whether you and Mr. Lazar have thought of trying to construct something to traverse time.
Well, yes, we've thought about it, but it's a big deal. I mean, you just can't go out and make this thing. You need a lot of equipment, so that's sheer speculation, and it'd be fun to try, but we don't have any of the stuff, but we certainly have talked about it.
Just an idle question of curiosity, John. If you had such a device...
Incidentally, we were going to go forward because that's a lot easier to do than going back.
That was going to be my question. Where would you go, time-wise?
Well, all you have to do to go forward in time is create a strong gravitational field. And you more or less just stay there while all the rest of the world passes, as time goes by. Then when you remove the gravitational field, you're wherever they were.
I see.
It's so few of us get to see those things. Now, for instance, I'd love to see one. I saw the one that Bob took me up to, and I saw that at night. Now, my wife, Marilee, who didn't believe in any of this before, as a matter of fact, it almost split up our family because of my interest in this. She's from Mississippi, and she just didn't believe any of it. And here in 1986, I was on a flight to Frankfurt, and she and my daughter Jackie are out in the garden gardening, and about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and Jackie looks up and she says, "Hey, Mom, look, a UFO." And they look up, and here's 2 of them at a very low altitude, less than a quarter of a mile away. I live right near Nellis Air Force Base. They were coming from Nellis and went around to the southern part of Sunrise. Now, that's an extremely rare sighting to this in the daytime, and it changed her opinion. Of course, she says, "Well, I saw him, but I still don't believe him." But she did see him.
Well, maybe that was the sighting that saved John Lear's marriage.
It definitely was the sighting that saved my marriage.
No kidding.
I really can understand that, John. And,
wow.
You know where I live out here, and you know what I'm close to.
Yeah.
And I see things quite frequently, John, and I'm very hesitant to talk about them. Frankly, I had one major sighting of an aircraft I told you about, or a craft. I don't know if it was an aircraft.
Right.
But I see other things, John, in the night sky a lot. And now there are those who say that activity up here has lessened or gone away or been moved. Can you tell me anything about that?
Well, there certainly hasn't been a good sighting in say, 2 years. And so there's a facility in northern Nevada where they do a lot of testing. Now, whether they do UFO testing, I don't know. But there is a major facility up there. There's also an increased activity down in Holloman, which seems to be just the new secret aircraft we've got. But, yeah, there definitely doesn't seem to be as much testing as there used to be. Just after Bob and I started talking about this, you used to be able to go up to test site and see all kinds of weird stuff, but there just aren't any sightings anymore.
I wonder if it is the attention that's been given up there, and there's been a lot of it. There's a lot of people hanging up there. Of course, they're trying to get more property now and isolate the area. And there's a kind of a government grab going on for property, as you know, John.
Yeah, and I don't really understand what the big deal is, because like in 1980, there was at least 30 AAOs, which are air access only areas in the United States, at which, all this weird stuff went on. So, Groom Lake is just one of a number of facilities.
It has been a pretty intense area, though.
It's been a pretty intense area, and I'm sure they're going to get the land.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I've heard that the testing has been severely curtailed for the past year or so.
Too many cameras, too many people.
Hi, John. Glad to talk to you.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
It's been a long time since I've been in Wichita.
I bet it has. I wondered, are you familiar with the writings of Rene Guénon or Fritjof Schuon?
No, what's that?
Religious writings concerning metaphysical stuff. How about stuff like the Tibetan Book of the Dead? You said you go toward the dark light instead of the light. Are you familiar with? Have you read that?
No, but that's an interesting thing. A dark light. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, you got to read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and I would recommend people like you to get in touch with people like, say, the Dalai Lama, and talk to them about this kind of stuff and see what they think.
Well, all right.
People that are realized or that have studied mystical or metaphysical stuff that are in that genre.
All right, thank you, John. You don't seem inclined to really be pursuing this much more. In other words, my assessment of you psychologically is that you have reached some kind of inner conclusion, and stop me if I'm wrong, and you're kind of settled about it now. Is that right?
Settled or fatalistic?
All right, fatalistic.
Yeah, I never in my wildest dreams, when I started getting into this, had any remotest hope of finding out as much as I did, and when I found out as much as I did, it was very interesting, and it was in one way extremely satisfying. But I didn't think that I'd find out much more than I did, so I continued on my life. And like I say, there's a lot of guys that just keep plugging along.
I know.
And but I think I found out pretty much what's going on, and so I'm continuing my life.
And fatalistic is the right word. That's kind of ominous for a lot of us, of course. Laugh. All right, on the east of the Rockies line, you're on the air with John Lear. Hi.
Yeah, this is Kevin from KCMO.
KCMO, Kansas City, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask John a question on the time travel deal. I heard that you can only go so far forward in time and so far backward in time. Is that true?
No, I think you can go both ways as long as you want. And to the answer of the paradox, if you go back in time and kill your father, will you still be here? The answer is yes, you will still be here because time is compartmentalized.
Okay.
You can go back and kill your father, but you'll still be here.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know. I was curious about that.
Right. Thank you very much. In other words, you will affect the local... All time is local. Is that right?
That sounds like a good analogy.
Yeah, all time is local. You will affect the immediate sphere or time that you commit this act in, but somehow time will bend back in on itself and everything will self-correct and you'll still be there somehow.
Whatever.
On the east of the Rockies line, you're on the air with John Lear. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Where are you, sir?
Erie, Pennsylvania.
Good. You're on the air with...
WFLP.
Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, love it. Outstanding.
Glad you're enjoying it.
Okay. For Mr. Lear, I have a couple questions. First of all, are you familiar with Guardian?
Yes.
You are. Guardian is legitimate?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, you're
I know
familiar
Bob
with Guardian.
Etzler. I know that he's a good researcher. I'm sure he's not faking all this. But, other than that, yes, I am familiar with the case.
Okay. Without getting very in-depth at all about religion, because I know that's a touchy subject. But do these civilizations, alleged civilizations, do they purport to be religious the way we
All right, that's a reasonable question, sir. John, do these beings themselves have a religious faith that we are aware of?
Well, in answer to your question, let me tell you what Whitley Strieber said about that when he was abducted, and he's absolutely horrendously terrified, and he's screaming and he's saying, oh God, help me, God, please help me. And the little Greys are looking down, and they very coolly they said, why do you call for your God? There's only us up here.
That will certainly serve as an answer, no question about it. On the wild card line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning.
Good morning. Art, this is Jim in St. Louis.
St. Louis, yes, sir.
Mr. Lear, I want to thank you on behalf of everyone listening for coming on the show. Thoroughly entertaining.
Well, thank you.
You seem to be hitting everything right on. For people that call up, they've read a book, or they're real religious, they obviously haven't been following some of the stuff covered on the show. The cover-up, the military involvement, politics, everything. You seem to be right on. I respect the fact that you don't want to go into the religion aspect, because I've read a little bit, I think, of what you've outlined there in a couple of different books. But again, the astronauts, the whole thing of keeping quiet, people can't understand why aren't they talking about this, and that this stuff really is happening. I'm getting announcements on our station here in KSD that say, this is a warning, this is not the views of this station. It is shocking. It's very shocking. A lot of this is, except my religious beliefs are simply, I believe above all else, above anything else, that there is the God, the creator of all things. And why can these things be happening? God takes care of other elements of nature in accordance with a plan. Why can this not be somewhat along an overall plan?
In the plan, in other words, yeah. Yeah, okay, all right, sir, hold on, listen to the answer. Go ahead, John.
What's the question?
Well, the question was, really, why do God and UFOs and the aliens have to be mutually exclusive?
They don't, but let me tell you a story that Bob Lazar told me once, we're talking about the universe and the ramifications of it all, and he's telling me about the theory that the universe expands until it can't go any further, and then it starts contracting, and time reverses, and everything comes down to its original size, less than an atom size, and then starts spreading out the other direction, whereas things only exist that travel faster than the speed of light. And so we came to the conclusion, now, whoever made that, that's God.
Whoever made that, that's God. Okay, well, I hope that serves as an answer to his question. You're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with John Lear. Where are you calling from, please?
Calling from Youngstown, Ohio.
Youngstown, yes, sir.
I have a copy of a videotape by Bob Lazar. I was wondering if Mr. Lear was familiar with it.
Oh, he sure is.
And I was wondering if he could give us some comments about the other two areas of S4 that Mr. Lazar talks about the physics of time travel and the charged particle beams.
All right, we've only got about a minute, John. Can you do it?
I'm not sure what areas he's talking about. Yes, that they had both of those things there. Once, I told you the stories where the hangar door was open. He walked into the craft to do some work, and he was in there about 2 hours, and when he came out, it was exactly the same time as before he went in. And when he asked what the explanation was, they said because the saucer's time shifted.
All right, we'll have to hold it there. From Youngstown, Ohio, thank you. John, we'll be right back to you.
Okay.
You're on the air with John Lear. Where are you calling from, please?
Memphis.
Memphis, Tennessee, all right? Yes.
Mr. Lear, it's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
On discussion of after-death experiences, would you please reconsider and go toward the bright light, the white light, not the dark?
Sure.
There's another body of work known as the Egyptian Book of the Dead, other than Tibetan, and please research that.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about the Bible, one of the most important books in the history of mankind. The New Testament, like much of the Old Testament, is in many places a greatly altered version of the original accounts on which it is based. In addition, probably less than 5% of all that Jesus and his original followers taught is found in the Bible. Many of these changes and deletions to the New Testament were made by special church councils. The editing process began as early as 325 AD during the First Council of Nicaea and continued well into the 12th century. For example, the Second Synod Church Council of Constantinople in 553 AD deleted from the Bible Jesus' references to reincarnation, an important concept.
This man is incredible with how quickly he's able to recount data and information and dates. This is incredible. He's like a computer.
Yeah. I just wanted to be sure that I got that on, that about the bright light, not the dark light.
All right, thanks. John, why the dark light?
Why going there?
Yeah.
Well, because according to Whitley, if you go to the bright light, you have made a conscious choice of which direction to go, and supposedly, according to him, at that point, if you go to the white light, the Greys or whoever's in charge of this thing can decide what to do with you. Now, they can either send you back into another body, or they can put you in the black box. Now, the reason that I wouldn't choose the white light is I don't want to spend what Whitley says is anywhere from 12 to 40,000 years in the black box. He was in there, and he says it's a very frightening experience. Now, I don't mind being by myself. I could probably spend a couple of years by myself, but I'm not sure whether I could spend 40,000 years. Whereas if you go towards the dark, you come right back into a terrestrial body, and you can continue on with whatever body you got into.
All right. Dear John and Art, this comes from Santa Barbara. Do you think there are any off-planet guys who are trying to help rescue us from this prison? Any hope for the future? Annie, Santa Barbara.
Possibly.
Possibly. All right. Tantalizingly, just possible. Also, this question, John, the Philadelphia experiment, Do you believe it really happened? Is there any connection between it and the UFOs?
Yes, obviously something happened during the Philadelphia experiment. Now, whether that boat actually disappeared or not, I don't know. But there's enough evidence that something very, very strange happened during that time due to the government's research into magnetism.
All right, and one more fax. This from Lawrenceville, Georgia. Jimmy Carter had seen a UFO. He was given a top-secret clearance. Thus, he was shut down when he became president.
Yes, he does. He filed his report in 1969 when he ran for president. One of his platforms was, I believe in UFOs because I personally see one, and if I am elected president, I will see that all information about UFOs is turned over to the public. Naturally, when he became president, we didn't hear one word, and that's because the presidents are briefed to a certain extent on the problem.
Is there any possibility that some of these aliens could come from beneath the Earth instead of from outer space?
Yes, most definitely.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Do you give much credence to the dimensional theories, John?
Well, I didn't used to, but there seems to be a body of evidence now that there is some kind of extra-dimensional creatures appearing here and there.
All right.
Well, basically, what I was calling about is just to throw out another theory here, if these things do happen, is essentially, like, first off, I don't really buy that some alien creatures are really using people as food, because the simple fact would be easier to kidnap a group of people to and then breed them as cattle, would it not?
Well, what about...
Aren't we being bred as cattle?
Who knows? Maybe we are. Well, anyways, some of the other things, like you said, like when they encountered them in Cambodia, and the Special Forces had to firefight with them, it would be a very good place to collect human bodies to study the anatomy, because you wouldn't have to worry about taking them and then probably bringing them back and things like that.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And truthfully, why are they so interested in this place? I mean, truthfully, we're in the neck of the woods, so to speak, in our galaxy, and what is so interesting for it?
All right. Why us is the question, John.
Why what?
Why us? Why are they interested in us? I could almost answer that. I mean, when you look at the Earth, it's a hustle and bustle of activity and growth and beings and intelligence, and it's a contrast to everything around it, right?
Yeah, well, my opinion is it's not that they came here looking down and say, oh, yeah, that's a neat place, let's go down and visit. I think they created the whole thing, and that's their interest.
So they have an intense interest in following their handiwork.
Yeah, their handiwork being the breeding of the human race over 200,000 years, in which they made 65 separate corrections to make us what we are today, which they refer to as containers. I doubt if the experiment is over. I think that it's continuing on. Each of these separate corrections, they have to when they bring in the new model, they have to recall the old model. And they do that with, mass plagues, floods, gyroscopic precessions of the Earth, which I might mention, all this EPA and BLM and stuff about, carefully burying our trash. Every 23,000 years, this Earth rotates on its axis and takes up a different rotation, and it essentially cleans everything out. So why are we so worried? We're about 1,000 years overdue for this rotation. So why are we worried about all this trash?
You're talking about a polar reverse?
Yeah. I'm just a little bit irritated because it used to take me 7 minutes to drive to the dump, and now it takes 3 hours.
Time for the big cleaning.
It's all going to be done for us. We don't have to worry about that.
All right.
Do you think that anything will come of this Roswell investigation?
All right, and yes, Representative Schiff, of course, is off and running on the investigation, as you know, John.
Yeah.
Do you think anything will come of it?
No, zero.
Zero?
Zero.
Why do you think that?
Well, because it's a cover-up. They're not going to let some congressman go in there and and find out what's going on.
Yeah, I suppose at the levels all this moves, a congressperson is not much.
Mr. Lear?
Yes.
A few callers back, a lady called asking you about the Bible, and you told her something that Jesus said about reincarnation. What did he say about that?
He believed in it, and he tried to tell us that it was true, but it was taken out of the Bible by these council of churches.
He did believe in it.
Yes, absolutely.
However, it was taken out.
Yeah, it sure was.
If I told that to somebody, how could I prove it?
You could get the Bill Bramley's book, The Gods of Eden. I think he discusses it in there.
On the wild card line, you're on the air with John Lear. Hi.
Radio Free America.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Lear. I believe in the Bible, and I'd like to talk to you about the Nephilim and how that could correlate into these things that you and Art have been describing, and also the fact that Linda Howe reported on these cattle mutilations, that the maggots on flies wouldn't touch the carcasses.
That's right.
For days. Now, that's something that seems a bit unnatural to me, and I'd like to ask you, throughout the Bible, there is a conflict of good and evil, and these things that you guys are describing do not sound very good to me.
Yeah, not warm and fuzzy. John?
That's correct. They would not be my idea of warm and fuzzy.
John, why do you think so many people, so many ufologists and people in the various associated fields want to present them always as warm and fuzzy? Why?
I think that because we couldn't imagine a advanced society not being warm and fuzzy. We figure, well, shoot, after all that civilization thousands of years ahead of us, they certainly must have worked out their problems and just want to come down and help us and cure cancer and AIDS and help us get to, cure our food problem and all the rest of it. I mean, it's certainly reinforced by Steven Spielberg and his Close Encounters and all that.
Yeah, it is true. John, a few quick ones for you by fax. From Alaska, a quick question for John, a paraphrase. The sheep know the voice of their master. Will we know?
I don't know enough about that. I know that's a quote, but I just can't put it together in time to give a decent answer.
Well, I can wonder, though, or I guess, try and help them out here. The sheep, us, know the voice of their master. Will we know when that voice comes that it is that they are our master? I guess is the question.
Yeah. No.
No comment.
No comment.
Art, if it's not too late in the show, could you ask John about my guess concerning cattle mutilations? Remember, I guessed the mutilations were to garner the components of a medium used to proliferate recombinant DNA research.
Well, I think, that's speculation, what it's all about.
Dear John, since 1988, that year to the present, round balls of light have been hovering above my house day and night. This is not a hoax. I've been videotaping these round balls of light during the night hours hovering above my house within only a half block at the very most. Since 1989, I've been videotaping them, and I've got these videotapes. What would you suggest somebody with evidence of this sort does?
There's not much you can do. Who's going to listen to you? I know a few people that have that phenomenon over there, and I don't know what they are, but
they are.
But they are. They certainly are.
Is John implying that the God of our Bible was created by aliens?
No. You're not going to get me into that now.
Okay. We'll just drop that one and go back to the phones. On the wild card line, you're on the air with John Lear. Hi. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is Art in Spokane.
Hello, Art.
And I wanted to ask John what he thought of the possibility that the deaths at Dulce were somehow related to the introduction or the further introduction of the AIDS virus into population, and also what his feelings are about the government being somehow involved in the development of the AIDS virus.
All right, thank you. John, AIDS, what do you think about AIDS?
Well, as I've said before, there's no question in my mind that the government developed it. The specific doctor, the Navy doctor that actually did the research, I believe his name was R.M. Donner. And yeah, we made it. What it was for, I don't know. Some people say it was to eliminate or decrease the population, but certainly there ought to be better ways to do it, because AIDS takes a long time to affect, and also it causes a lot of suffering. I think our hospitals would be overtaxed before it would start reducing the population. So when people say, well, it's just the government trying to reduce the population, possibly, but you think even they would be able to figure out a quicker way to do it.
Good point.
Well, I know that there was congressional testimony. It's on the record, John, an inquiry of some scientists about whether such a thing could be created that would produce or suppress the human immune system.
Yeah, I've got a copy of that, and that's what they got their initial $10 million funding to create that.
So that much is at least on the record. All right. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, sir. Where are you?
I'm KOGO, San Diego.
Excellent.
John, I had some questions about one of the guests you had on earlier. Wrote the Montauk books.
Yeah. Oh,
Preston Nichols.
Preston Nichols. I had him on the program, yes.
Right. And I wondered if your guest could make any references to some of the things he said in his books, like the alien treaties or things like that.
I didn't follow the Montauk books too closely. I did listen to Preston Nichols several times. All I can say is specifically, yes, there is an alien treaty. But other than that, unless you have a more specific question.
No, I guess he just wanted a general reference, whether you were familiar with it, whether you agreed with it.
Yeah, we certainly do have a treaty.
All right, one more stab at this, John. This comes from Veronica in Wichita. I'm a Christian, but not so arrogant a Christian to believe that we are the only form of life God created. As the Bible says, in my Father's house there are many mansions. Were it not so, wouldn't he have told us?
Well, somebody had to create everybody, right?
Somebody did it. Some entity, something did it. I think most of us believe that a power far greater than ourselves had something to do with this. It's just too complex.
I was wondering if John might have privileged information that might give us a clue to our future. Have we been told anything that might tell us where we're headed?
Oh, I will tell you this, that in my brief career as a ufologist, I've made several predictions, 2 or 3 of them, and they've all turned out false. So I may be a good researcher, but I'm a terrible prophet.
If you look at the space-time continuum, it is a viable concept.
Yeah, I think that what he's trying to do is figure out how they can get from place to place without violating the speed of light, and because they don't have access to the real information of how it works, they invent stuff like wormholes. But the way it works is called the instantaneous propagation of gravity. Science doesn't know it yet, but gravity is instantaneous, and there's 2 forms of it, A and B. And basically, to travel hundreds of times faster than the speed of light, what you do is generate a very powerful beam of gravity and pull space towards you. Space is actually a fabric. It can be pulled this way and that. We think of it as a nothing. We think it is something that has just 1 hydrogen atom per square meter.
John, in a sense, then, you're not really traveling through the space to get from A to B.
No.
You are jumping across an area.
Correct. You are pulling space towards you and coalescing or uniting with space that's maybe hundreds of light years away. But that's why they invent wormholes, because they know that it can be done. They're just trying to figure out a way that it can be done.
I think I know the concept of a black hole. What's the difference between a black hole and a wormhole, John?
Well, a black hole is just a very intense a collapsed star, which is not letting any light. It is so dense that it doesn't let light go through it. Wormhole is a completely different thing. Wormhole is what they're speculating is how to get from point A to point B very fast without violating the principle of the speed of light.
Do you believe it can be violated? And I don't mean by the method you just described, but I mean in actual speed travel.
No, I don't think you can go faster than the speed of light in a linear direction. You have to do it some other way.
All right. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Art. Good morning, John. You know, listening to you today, I'm Susan from Moscow Mills, and
Moscow Mills, where? Idaho?
Missouri.
Missouri, all right.
KSD, yes.
Yes.
You know, in the fear that some people have of what John is talking about, they must understand that whatever experience that we have as humans or humanoids or whatever, it's a very good experience, and obviously whoever and whatever has created us and whatever use that we have for them, we have use for ourselves too. And if there's there's so much love and joy in life, opposed to the diversity, which there's plenty of that too, but the mind that was given to us and the spirituality that we have needs to be used, and I think that's what he's talking about when he says, go on and live your life even though you have more information.
That's right. You get to do what you want. You get to make your life and have fun and do whatever you want.
Right. Can you tell me if there's
beautiful
in the other dimensions of what you're talking about in the 70 or so groups, do they show any sign of their own spirituality? I'm not talking about religion here at all, but of a separate spirituality or more intense spirituality, or just different, or?
No, I don't have an answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
John, you've said it before, vessels, containers for the soul?
Well, if we're speculating for the soul, it wasn't described in the documents that Bob read exactly what we were containers of. We could be containers of hormones, enzymes, or whatever. My own speculation is that we are containers of soul.
Well, it's I guess it's a good one, and I hope we do contain souls.
You can never destroy the soul; it goes on forever and ever and ever. And some people are able to recall past experiences, but most people are not. You're not supposed to be able to recall, but in fact, the soul goes on forever.
All right. On that note, vessels, all of you, containers, we are going to have to pause for mortal news at the top of the hour. We'll be back with John Lear.
I hope you're enjoying this show, fellow containers of souls. Thank you again for tuning in. Let's pop in.
Please ask your guest, who does the briefing of presidents when they come into office on the supposed national security aspects of IFOs?
Would be MJ-12.
MJ-12, which still operates. Who's been making the decisions over the years on the continuity of our government's policy toward IFOs?
MJ-12.
Who decides what the president should know?
MJ-12. And elaborate on that. Within the MJ-12 intelligence community, there's a great disdain for elected and appointed officials, which is why the president or the Congress or any other appointed officials don't know very much. Security clearances work like this. The lowest security clearance you can get is top secret. Above that, there's 28 levels of what is called top secret crypto, and they run through 1 through 28, 28 being the highest. Above that, there's 10 names like Umbra, Amber, Ultra, the top being Majestic. Now, the President of the United States has a clearance about top secret crypto 17. He doesn't know very much. He doesn't need to know very much. He's kind of a figurehead. So they tell him, a little bit. They tell him probably that there's recovered vehicles and that they maybe have a dead body or so, but he doesn't know the whole story. He doesn't need to know the whole story to perform his job.
All right. John, this, and then we'll go back to the phones from San Clemente, California. Art, I heard that a nuclear explosion can actually destroy a soul. And I heard Mark McCandlish say there is a death ray that can eliminate the soul. Does John know if the soul can die or be destroyed?
No, it's my understanding that it can't. No.
That it cannot. All right. I suppose a nuke would shake it up at least. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning. Hello there.
Hello?
Yes, sir. You're on the air.
Yeah, I'm calling from Medford, Oregon.
Medford, yes. What's your question?
I know quite a bit about the UFO subject, and I've taken note of the fact that these beings seem to be quite interested in the human soul. I think Whitley Strieber said that he doesn't believe that any human being on Earth really knows what these beings are and what they really represent. Also, for your information, you know, when a moth goes to the light, you can grab it, and it makes it easier to grab and do whatever you want with it.
Do you like that? Do you like that analogy, John?
That sounds good to me.
The moths go toward the light, huh? And they're grabbed, or they fry themselves.
Your aviation credentials are certainly impeccable, to say the least. But like the previous caller said, your science discussion is kind of strange, to say the least. It doesn't seem to hold a lot of water with any present scientific theory.
Okay, well, just tell me specifically where I went wrong.
Well, the discussion of element 115 is all based on a non-existent element.
No, it's existent because I held it, I touched it, I did experiments with it.
And this is a stable, non-radioactive element.
That's correct.
Okay, well, let's suppose that's true, and I can't say anything different than that. I would like to say also, you mentioned the book, The Gods of Eden. There's recently been released on the internet a excellent, in my opinion, review of this book that says that it's pretty much based on L. Ron Hubbard's Scientology. What do you think of that?
I don't think so, because I've studied Scientology for a very short time, and I don't think there's any correlation there.
Well, thanks a lot for your time, and I've been keeping up with your information since about 1988, and I hope it's not all over but the screaming. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
He seems like a healthy skeptic.
That's an interesting comment. I hope it's not, too. Wildcard line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning.
Yeah, I'd like to ask John Lear a question, but I really doubt that he can do anything but deny it. John, how long have you been involved in the occult?
Never, as far as I know.
You're saying that most of the information in the books that you read are not occult books?
No.
No, because I read a book about 10 years ago called The Cosmic Trigger, Final Secrets of the Illuminatus, and how they were going to duplicate the second coming of Christ with the alien deal, that people would believe that they were going to be saved by aliens instead of Christ. No.
John, I understand what he's saying. I'm sure a lot of the religious folks out there think you've got 3 6s somewhere tattooed under your hairline. Huh, John?
Yeah.
Under that gray hair?
Yeah, I see.
John, what about Air America? You did, can you talk about that at all?
Sure. I worked for CASI, which was Continental Air Services, Inc., a wholly owned subsidiary of Continental Airlines. We did the same work as Air America, but we were not a wholly owned subsidiary of the CIA, which Air America was. We did all the same stuff, but no, I did not work for Air America. I worked for CASI. And those that are familiar with the operations in Southeast Asia will know exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm not going to. I was going to bring some up, but I'm not going to do it.
Go ahead. What is it?
Iran-Contra.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Sure. What's there to talk about?
You transported, or were about to transport, some material to Iran, yes?
Arms and ammunition from Israel to Iran, right?
Uh-huh. So you ran some of the early weapons that Israel cut loose on our word, is that correct?
Yeah, we didn't. I never made a flight. Like I say, the first airplane in got shot down. The Mossad, who was running the operation, didn't want to send the 707s in, which I was flying. So they canceled the operation. Later, I think it was like 6 or 8 months later, they ran it with another airline that was out of, somewhere like Nassau or someplace like that, and ran it from the Persian Gulf, like Dubai or one of those countries, directly into Iran, so they didn't have to go around another country like we did, Turkey. We had to go through Turkish airspace, and the deal was that we would drop every other load or give Turkey every other load that went in permission for flying over their airspace.
All right. Just thought I'd get that out. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with John Lear. Where are you calling from, please?
Seattle.
Seattle. All right.
Yeah, I'd like to ask him a little more about that security that the government has that doesn't allow the president to know very much.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
What was that called again?
Well, I just described how security works. The lowest clearance is top secret, and then there's 38 levels above that. But the President of the United States only has like a number 17 level. There's not enough time to clear him, nor is there any reason to clear him.
What sort of is this? Some sort of government agency that this security? You had mentioned some name.
MJ-12?
MJ-12 was created by President Truman, and it more or less got out of hand in 1952 when President Eisenhower came in. Being a military man, he gave more teeth and more power to MJ-12, and it got out of control. They ran the whole operation. People who think we have a democracy, even a republic, are badly mistaken. We don't. But we hear it enough that we have a free country. The bigger the lie, the more people believe it. But in fact, it's not true. MJ-12 runs the whole thing.
Okay, one last thing, Art. Could you give the number, or not the number, the address to your network?
Let me also take a moment to appreciate this is in the 90s. This is in 94, before the advent of the internet, and there's all these truth seekers out there getting in whatever communication they can via snail mail and public radio. It's definitely interesting to see the time capsule of sorts. And just like I imagine this media will be a time capsule of sorts, 20, 30 years from now. That's just fascinating.
Can you tell me about navigation of these craft and what they'd be built of? What kind of compounds or?
It's my understanding that the material that they're made out of is more or less a grown material. They've been able to compact the atoms to such a tight state that it's almost indestructible. We've seen that many times where a saucer will crash into sand and be at a 45-degree angle impact, but there's little or no damage at all. As far as the navigation, I don't know how that works. I just know how the propulsion works.
Okay, well, best of luck.
All right, thank you. John, you remember, but first of all, did you happen to catch the movie Roswell on Showtime?
Sure, it was, the producer was a friend of mine.
Oh, what was your assessment of the movie? Was it good?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Each time they make a movie, they get a little closer and a little closer to the truth. I didn't like the way that they portrayed the alien as, some poor lady, reaching out, and it didn't look all that realistic, but, it was better than this stuff before.
Well, in that movie and in descriptions of Roswell, there is a number of witnesses, John, who say that a piece of material from one of those craft was held, and they showed it in Roswell, and you could crumple it up, and it would spring right back out again.
Right.
Is that similar to the material that you described a little while ago?
As the construction?
Yes, sir.
Some of it. Some of it.
Yeah, you could imagine, I suppose, various parts of it.
Yeah, they're all different.
Uh-huh.
I got 3 short questions for John. Number 1, are you a member of the Trilateral Commission?
No.
How about the Council on Foreign Relations?
No.
How about a member of the Masons?
Of what?
The Masons.
The Masons?
No, but what is it?
Oh, the Masonic Lodge?
Oh, Masonic? No, but I can tell you that I have certainly been accused of that.
Okay.
How about the CIA, John? Let's cover them all.
Okay, so at least he refuted it here.
KGB. NSA. No?
No, I'm just a poor old airline pilot.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, caller?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Nikiski, Alaska.
It's such an interesting situation to be in within this whole field because you're operating on trust me, bro. You are just outright operating on just hope and it's in such a controversial and such a skeptic-filled field that naturally people will question you. I know myself, I get pinpointed as shill all the time. And what am I supposed to say? No, like there's implications on whether you agree to it jokingly or you outright deny it. Like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So it's definitely an interesting predicament for these individuals, especially that are so far up in this chain of leaks and people coming forward.
Somebody wants to know, John, isn't it possible the aliens are lying to us?
Yes. You know, they've been, several documents said that they are deceptive. And I was going to tell the previous caller that a friend of mine was looking up one morning ready to go fly, and he saw a saucer 1/20th the size of the moon just go across it. And while we were talking here, I had a reference that I was going to read, but I can't find it, a NASA technical document that documents about 600 different types of weird phenomena that was observed on the moon between the year 1600 and now, as far as blinking lights, flashing lights, weird shadows, all kinds of stuff, and I just can't find it.
All right, well, if you run across it, we'll do it. Matt in Portland wants to know, among other things, about a secret Earth war. Linda Howe spoke about a secret Earth war. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, she was saying that somebody had, they have these secret vaults where they hold high-level discussions that are soundproofed and monitored and swept all the time.
Sure.
And somebody had stepped out, opened the door, and as somebody went in, they said, well, how's Earth's secret war going? And, of course, what he was referring to is the conflict we have with the Greys.
All right. Got to ask you about one more thing. I've done a series of interviews, John. I don't know whether you heard any of them, with Richard Hoagland.
Yeah.
And, Richard, did you hear some of that?
No, I didn't, but I just got his tape, his 2 new tapes of the structure on the moon.
Right.
That stands something like 6 or 7 miles high.
That's right.
It's very interesting, and I ordered the photographs myself from NASA, and I'm looking forward to them arriving within the next few days.
All right, very good. Yeah, I have a lot of the pictures. I also have the videotapes. The presentation was very captivating, and you would think that it would be breaking in the news, but not so far, John.
No, really, they're just not interested in as far as his work on Mars. I told him that Bob Lazar had seen in his briefing the Cydonia region, photos that weren't accessible to the public, and there was definite doors and windows and construction on those pyramids in the Cydonia region.
All right, on the toll-free line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, sir. Where are you?
I'm Bob from KEX, Portland, Oregon.
Yes, good, Bob.
I got a couple questions for John. One is he familiar with Bill Meyer?
Billy Meyer was over in Switzerland?
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Well, he talks in some of his contact papers about the Pleiadians being the oldest group of visitors on the Earth, and they're actually from the same ancestors as we are. The question I have is they also believe in reincarnation, and they don't really believe in religion as such, but more as creation. And they believe in the good in man and whatnot. And the question I have is they don't like us dealing with the Greys because they seem to think that they are a negative life force.
Yeah, I heard that.
And why? Apparently, they came and offered their help to the American leadership at one time or another, and it wasn't accepted. Well, I'm just kind of wondering, is that just because they weren't offering technology, they were just offering help?
Weapons. We wanted weapons, and the Greys offered to give us the weapons, and the Pleiadians did not.
All right. John, I want you to give some advice to the young ufologists out there. A lot of people are absolutely lit afire by all of this, and they're going to travel down the same road that you traveled down. And you've now reached a point where you've said you're fatalistic about it, and the best thing we can all do is go out and live our lives and enjoy our lives. What would you say to the young ufologists out there, John?
Well, of course, they're not going to pay any more attention to that than I did when people told me that, when I first started getting into it.
Well, I know, but we should try. We really should try. I mean, if you were to sit down with somebody who's just starting into all this, what would you say to him?
Good luck.
Good luck?
Yeah.
You wouldn't try to stop them?
No, because I know that the lure of information, of finding out things, of stuff is just too powerful. There's just no way that you could stop anybody.
Well, that's good and realistic anyway, John. Thanks. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with John Lear. Hi.
How you doing?
We're doing okay.
Oh, okay. This is Dave from Grand City.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I got a question for him. My question is that out of all the things I've heard him say tonight, how could anything be possible? I mean, I'm a big Star Trek fan, and everything that he talks about seems to come in there. How does that all happen? And could it be possible that someday we could travel like that?
All right. Why not? John, do you think that is in mankind's future? In other words, is there going to be a federation? Is there going to be an Earth that goes outward? Is that where we're headed, or do you think not?
No, I don't think so. First of all, I think the cleaning out of the petri dish is going to come
pretty soon.
Well, not pretty soon, but whenever it comes. The Star Trek was based on that. Well, I guess I'm right. I was going to say based on that we were first, but that's not what it was based on. Gene Roddenberry was supposedly one of 3 Hollywood producers that was given, special information to use in his series. Now, since then, I've read where he denies that, but who knows?
Who knows? All right, but you think, on balance, we're going to be pretty much earthbound. We're not... And then there's the petri dish.
Right.
Enjoy your lives, folks.
Right.
On the toll-free line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going okay.
Great. I was wondering, I live in Phoenix, Arizona. A few years back, a bunch of my friends and I, we were out in the front yard and we saw a great green light beam going across the sky. And it was solid. And it had a beginning and it had an end to it, like water coming out of a hose when you first turn it on and shut it off.
Yeah.
Like a big plasma beam going through the sky. And it was a good, 30 to 40 feet in diameter. And, that lasted a good 3-4 miles going through the sky. It was like a big arc. And I was wondering if you had any knowledge of what that might be.
No, that's the first description I've heard of unusual phenomena. I've heard a lot of different stuff, but that's the first one I've heard of that kind.
Boy, me too. That's an interesting one, though. All right, on the wild card line, you're on the air with John Lear. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, this is Matt in Portland.
Yes, Matt.
Made it through. John, I wanted to ask you a question very quickly. You spoke of William Bramley's book, Gods of Eden.
Yeah.
Where he describes the humans have been manipulated throughout history by extraterrestrials. And what I wanted to know is if you've had any information indicating that possibly the New World Order push is being orchestrated by these beings.
The order of what?
The
New World Order.
New World Order.
Yeah, no, I don't have any opinion on that.
Yeah, good morning. I'm calling from the Kingdom of Valley Center, which is in Southern California at the base of Mount Palomar.
Welcome.
It's famous 200-inch Hale telescope. You know, Dr. Hale, it's interesting, he never saw his telescope become a reality, but he was led by an invisible dwarf who apparently inspired him, told him where to build it, and that sort of thing. I have 2 questions. First of all, what does your guest think of George Adamski, who is also a local fellow here? He was apparently the father of the UFO culture. And also, does he have any information on a hypersonic vehicle called Aurora, which is apparently a top-secret thing coming out of a base in northern Scotland. We have a lot of sonic booms here on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and we've been hearing that this is coming from this Aurora vehicle, which does something strange over the San Diego area.
All right, hold it there. Let's get a response. John?
First of all, George Adamski reported everything exactly as it happened. He was reported to be a hoaxer, but no, all that stuff happened to him. The photos were analyzed by friends of mine who had very good analyzing equipment, and it was true. There was one picture of him looking outside of a saucer, and that was true. Hale had a very interesting background. There was an alien that talked to that guy and led him in some of his research endeavors, and he has a very, very interesting history. The Aurora is a Mach 15 airplane operating out of somewhere in the United States, but also goes into Machrihanish, which is in northern Scotland.
I see.
Yeah, that is one of our six top secret airplanes.
How high does that fly, do you know?
285,000 feet.
Wow.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And at Mach 15?
Yeah. Whew. People say Mach 7 or 8, but it's not. It's Mach 15.
Mach 15, wow. Toll-free line, you're on the air with John Lear. Hello.
Hey, this is Dana in Eugene.
Hi, Dana, KPNW country.
Yeah, when I lived in Redmond, Washington, I was over to friends of a friend's house, and there was a Army intelligence guy who his dad worked with for a lot of years, and this guy sent him like just a thousands of page document. He was supposedly on the run from the government because they were trying to hunt him down, and he sent like 6 of these papers out. And one of the things he said was that Roswell, and he was giving, case file numbers, everything, anything you could possibly want on it. I just barely saw the document, but we just sat around and talked about it one night. He said at Roswell, they recovered the bodies. One of them was alive. His name was something like Emu or Inu or something like that. They had like 2 separate brains, one on the left side, one on the right side.
That's correct.
They ate human flesh.
Oh, please.
I didn't know that, but yeah, go ahead.
And just, he went into the whole cover-up, but he detailed everything from, different fighter pilots, their names, their vehicle identification number, everything, just hundreds of documents on that.
Well, it'd be great to get those documents, wouldn't it?
Oh, I wish I knew the guy. That was the only time I ever talked to the guy. I moved like a week after that.
Huh.
All right, thank you. John, a brain on the left and a brain on the right?
Yeah, it was called bifurcated brain system. They were completely independent and separated by a ridge bone. Now, why that was, I don't know, but I remember reading the autopsy report on it.
Wow, you have an autopsy?
Well, the stuff that Stringfield put out.
Yeah, all right. On the wild card line, you're on the air with John Lear. Hi.
Yeah, this is Lewis over in Chico. John,
yeah.
About 2 years ago, I had an opportunity while I was back east to run into an intelligence officer. I won't give his branch of service because I certainly don't want to get him in trouble. But he worked out of one of our top command units back on the East Coast, and he told me that, now this is what he said, that the aliens that supposedly that our government's dealing with are in a non-interference type of pact, and that there were other aliens who were interfering, and he said there was actually 3 levels of government in this country, and they're all vying for positions of power, and they're kind of all in like a standoff to each other because, different groups of these supposed aliens have upped the ante. It's just kind of like here on Earth, Bosnia, somebody gets an AK-47 and the next guy gets a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think your friend was right.
He also said, though, that the ones that, were, they kind of kept an overall picture of the thing. He said that most of the abductions were not being carried out by aliens, but they were being carried out by the government, and it was for use for later. They were programming people. They would go out and find people who would be susceptible to this. He said they had special editions of films that were very subliminal, and they would get like a control who would make friends with certain individuals, and they would go over to the guy's house, and show him a special copy of E.T., except the guy's not knowing he's watching a special copy of E.T., and they would program these people up to a point where they would either give them a hypnotic experience, or they would actually, and I thought this was kind of amusing, but he said they actually hired dwarfs and would dress them up and have a whole theater set up to be like a ship and give these people a physical experience, so that even if they took them out and they got out to a psychiatrist or a hypnotist who was not even believing in this, when he would put them under, that he would get the reading back from them that they actually believed what they went under. All
right, kind of a Mission Impossible sort of setup.
Yeah, that's true, and it's been detailed by Martin Cannon, the government abductions, and yeah, they do pretend they're aliens. I don't think it's the predominant form of abductions, but yes, the government is certainly doing that.
There's a lot of research now, John, into the abduction phenomenon. A lot of the researchers have sort of left the sighting mode, and they think the way to pursue this now is through the abduction phenomenon. Do you agree with that, John?
That'd be hard to do, but I'm just going to sit and watch.
On the toll-free line, you're on the air with John Lear. Hi.
Yeah, this is Rich in Anchorage, Alaska.
Hello, Rich.
I guess you could call me one of them fat, dumb, and lazy Americans, because I just got turned on to your program a little while ago, so I'm learning. But I was wondering if you could explain to me what MJ-12 actually is.
All right. Well, we did earlier, but we will again. John?
MJ-12 was the government, the secret review body that was put together by President Truman in 1947 to review and decide what to do about the alien threat, if any. It was given teeth by President Eisenhower when he got in, and regretted by President Eisenhower when he got out. He said, beware of the military-industrial complex,
he sure did,
which MJ-12 essentially run. For the people who don't believe that MJ-12 exists, my source for the existence of MJ-12 was Jimmy Doolittle, and since he's passed away now, I don't mind saying that was my source. He confirmed to me that it did exist.
Wow. What a great interview. John Lear seems legitimate. Obviously, all of this subject matter is so touchy and so beyond conspiratorial, and the web of it all just really extends deeper than I'm sure we can even imagine. But I definitely found a lot of enjoyment out of this, and I hope you did as well. The fact that you made it this far is pretty incredible, and I appreciated you listening to that radio show with me. That was fun. Much love. Cheers.